tonight. Scott Mallett's going to be our speaker. And I'm going to butcher this name like most people probably do, but it's going to be on the Portland and Ogdensburg Railroad when they built the line through Crawford Notch. Scott's going to share a few stories along the way of that project between North Conway and Crawford Notch Station. He's going to explain a lot more about that. But talking about Scotty, he's been a 470 Club member for many years. We know he was because he voted tonight. He worked at the Conway Scenic Railroad from 92 until 2014. He lives in Glen, New Hampshire with his wife, Linda, and their two most important cats, Lilly and Sally. So, Scott, you have got the floor.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, everybody, for staying for the presentation. I really appreciate it. We're going to cover the line from Interrail to Crawford Notch Station. And just to give you an idea of what it was like in the 1870s, 1871, this country was in a depression and with thousands of people out of work. Theodore Roosevelt was the child, and there were only 34 states, and the West wasn't even settled yet. So now we'll see if I can do the share screen and get to the presentation. Share. And that. Yeah. Oh, look at that. It worked.
Looks good on this end.
Okay. Anything I have to close?
Looks good over here.
Okay, great. Okay. No. There we go. There's a little information for you on the slide. P&O connection would lead the people of Portland into the Midwest and Canada. When with the Civil War over, railroads were springing up all over the place, all over the country, as America was undergoing a reconstruction. In 1867, the state of Maine granted a charter to the Portland and Ogdensburg Railroad to be formed, and it would connect with the Portland Division to the Vermont Division. America's first transcontinental railroad, known originally as the Pacific Railroad and then later the Overland Route, was a 1,911-mile continuous railroad line built beginning in 1863 and completed on May 10th, 1869. That connected the existing eastern U.S. rail network with the Pacific coast. The P&O Railroad was under construction in 1870. In this program, we're going to be covering the line from Intervale to the Gateway, basically the top of the notch. Now let's take a look at the two men who were instrumental in not only forming the P&O, but they also helped change the face of Maine and New Hampshire forever. This is Brigadier General Samuel Anderson. He would study law at Bowdoin College and Harvard universities, and then he attended the Dana Law School, earning his degree in 2.5 years. He served as Cumberland County Attorney from 1856 to 1861. He served as President and Surveyor of the Port of Portland Board of Trade, appointed by President Buchanan. And he was a representative for the city of Portland in the state legislature. He was Brigadier General in the state militia from 1856 to 1860. His ability and tenaciousness in all aspects of life were highly recognized, and he was well respected. So this is...
You sound like that?
What's that? This is John Falwell Anderson, and he was civil engineer from 1843 to 1887. He was close president with James Polk. He was civil engineer for over six railroads during his career. He was a member of the State Board of Agriculture, and he formed and was first president of the Maine Genealogy Society. And he was an expert in civil engineering, and he was well respected and thought of by his peers and the public alike. Now, this was where the train route was selected. It was estimated that the Portland and Ogdensburg Railroad from Portland, Maine to Fabians, with the connection with the Boston, Concord, and Montreal Railroad, would cost $3 million. However, due to the cost overruns being unknown and the entire cost of the construction of the railroad was not known, the approval of the expansion of the P&O into New Hampshire was pending. Get my Sorry, I have to turn the page for my notes here. All right. Now, so the New Hampshire requirements, all four conditions were met. The important thing was being that the state tracks would pass through Crawford Notch. The most important requirement was that the railroad would take the route through Crawford Notch and not around Crawford Notch. With the New Hampshire approval, the Portland and Ogdensburg Railroad had the authority to build the railroad. Now we're getting underway here. The ground was broken without ceremony near Portland's Seawall Street. It was the entrance to Thompson's Point, and at that time they used 56-pound rail, and it would weigh 1,848 pounds measured across the way without measured across the way without trespassing. That's how we got the length of the rail over in Bartlett. We looked across the way and guessed at the length. We didn't want to trespass. Now we're on to Crawford Notch. Contractors for the section from Portland to Fryeburg, Maine, were Fuller and Harding. Then the work continued from Fryeburg to North Conway with Wilson, Tennant, and Hogan as contractors. For this section, rails were imported from Wales. At this time, it is not known how many laborers were involved in the building of the railroad. Tonight, we'll be talking about the section circled in red. All right, now we're at Intervale. Let me go back one slide in case I missed it here. On the North Conway. At this time, it's not known how many workers were involved in the building of the railroad, as I said before. Extensive work in Maine into North Conway filled in gaps in the road bed and did extensive grading. The most extensive work done was near Artist Falls Road in North Conway. The P&O station at North Conway included a small three-stall roundhouse, a turntable, and a large car shed. The rail reached North Conway on June 3rd, 1872. With the Portland, Great Falls, and Conway Railroad, they came in and built the North Conway station and facilities that are there now that the Conway Scenic runs in September of 1874. No construction work from August of 1871 through May of 1872 due to the lack of funding. When the work resumed in 1872, excuse me, it was done with a great deal slower as an it was done a great deal slower as the nationwide, and I got it that time, epidemic was happening, and that was a form of pneumonia. It killed most of the horses, so oxen were used instead. In 1872, the train speed was for passenger 24 miles an hour, and for freight, it was 12 to 13 miles an hour. The length of the passenger trains was 3 to 4 cars, and the freight trains, excuse me, were 15 to 16 cars. Now, the rails reached Bartlett, and the positive impact on the railroad being started was the logging railroads in Bartlett in the P&O years. One of them being built was the Rocky Branch Railroad that was in Glen, and that was in existence from 1906 to 1914. And later, two more would come in on the east, with being the East Branch and the Bartlett and Albany. In mid-October 1872, the tracks were washed away near Saco River in Glen, and all trains were canceled for 2 weeks. If you folks have ridden on the Conway Scenic Railroad's train to Crawford Notch or any time during Glen, from North Conway to Glen, you'll probably know exactly where this washout occurred. It's right along the Saco River. The Saco River, as you come around the corner, Saco River will be on your left, and it's that part where the water comes right up close to the tracks. That's where it washed out. And it's Bartlett Station, and then on your left you'll see the Bartlett Station. That's the Portland and Ogdensburg original station. That's the only known picture of that station to exist. The one on the right was built. That one was, according to my records here, that one was built in 1873, and it was after the first one there had burned down, and there were 5 passenger stations in Bartlett. There was the Portland and Ogdensburg original station that I showed you on the left. On the right, there were 4 more. They all burned down. It seemed to be seemed like everything burned down at one time or another. Um, the the last station, that was built in 1927. It was basically the bottom half of the picture on the right. The bottom half of the station, the first floor, was redone with a roof, and basically that was the station. And it was sold to a ski club in 1959 when passenger service was abolished. And it was painted gray and pink. It was gray with pink trim. That was the colors of the ski club that bought it. And the new furnace was installed downstairs. And of course, the coal dust was in the building for all those years from 27 to 59. And one cold October night, the furnace came on and ignited all the coal dust, and it burned to the ground. The heat was so hot that it blistered the paint on some of the surrounding buildings. All right, circled in red is the track complex in Bartlett. There was a connection with the Bartlett Peg Mill, the Bartlett and Albany Railroad, and the Bartlett Land and Lumber Company sawmill. There was also a coal trestle put in near the roundhouse. Now, that trestle was so steep that locomotives would start pushing the cars forward to the coal trestle at the east end of the Y, the very tip of the Y, and they would wind that baby up just as full throttle as they could do it because the trestle was so steep. But you had to know exactly where to, put the brakes on to stop, or you'd go over the end. But it was most engineers that they put on there had experience and knew exactly how to get the train stopped. I wouldn't want to do it. It must have been something to see. The roundhouse was built from 1888 to 1900. It was six stalls, had a water tower of 17,500 gallons. It had the state-of-the-art turntable. It was an iron turntable. That was removed in 1912 when the articulated Mallet type locomotives came in. Now we're going to be heading up through the Notch. Now give you a little bit about Bemis. Dr. Samuel Bemis, he was born in 1793 and he died in 1881. He loved the mountains more than city life. He was prominent in dentistry and was a pioneer in the advent of false teeth and holding many patterns on that. And he also did some inventions of false teeth. Bemis was also a pioneer in the field of photography. His daguerreotype camera and photos can be seen at the Eastman Kodak Museum in Rochester, New York. At one time, he was the owner of most of Hart's location and the old Mount Crawford House. According to Bemis, the register. According to Bemis, the register According to Bemis, the register for the Crawford House contained the names of John Farwell Anderson and many other respected leaders of the time. Now we're here to Bemis Station. The Bemis Station was a flag stop. It had to be when it was in existence while Dr. Bemis was living. The old Mount Crawford House across the right-of-way from the Bemis Stone Cottage it was rented to the Portland and Ogdensburg to house the men that were building the line through Crawford Notch. And one of the men that immigrated in from England was put in charge of mixing and making the black powder. Dynamite was more safer and but it was not readily available. The name of this man was John Viles, and you may know him by a different name, the Hermit of Crawford Notch, English Jack. When the rail line was completed, the inside of the old Mount Crawford house was laid to waste. I guess those guys knew how to party. Now the images are the same. You'll notice that over the left heading west and on the right heading east. The people were repositioned at the end of the road. Now we'll be ascending the grade. Key feature of the surrounding area is Frankenstein Cliff and Frankenstein Trestle and Frankenstein Bluff. The wood for the Frankenstein Trestle was ordered from a firm in the south. Now this was going to be made of sturdy southern pine. Now, if you can imagine Frankenstein trestle being built with pine instead of iron. Now, this was going to happen. And the schooner for the voyage took off for the north, and while at sea, a storm sank the ship along with all hands. The Phoenix Bridge Company offered to erect a new iron viaduct trestle of 504 feet with a height of 85 feet at the highest point and a 4-degree curvature to the left. And they were going to do that for 150% the cost of the wooden trestle. The Frankenstein trestle was never removed. It was strengthened in 1905, again in 1936, and it's recently by the state of New Hampshire DOT, which now owns the rail line. Now, if you know where to go underneath Frankenstein trestle, there's a path. You go underneath the trestle and look up, and you can see the original girders of the Frankenstein trestle are incorporated with the new structure. Now, while work was being done to complete the trestle, work crews began to build the line from Fabian Station east. That's Frankenstein trestle. Now, the photo on the left is Frankenstein trestle being built. Now, you can't really see it's not a very good clear image the way it is presented on screen. But if you zoom in on it, bring it towards you, you can see from the outer edge of the right, you can see all the way back to almost the Game Station. Excuse me, the Carrigain Station. Now, Godfrey Nicholas Frankenstein. The original family's name was Trapt, and they immigrated from Germany. And the family took the Frankenstein name as the Frankenstein Castle was nearby their hometown. And they took the name while they immigrated to America. Bemis, he named the cliffs, the bluff, and the trestle for his good friend Frankenstein. Frankenstein would not live to see the trestle built. He died in 1873. And June 9th of last year was the 150th anniversary of railroading over the Frankenstein trestle. Okay. Now, Frankenstein again was born in 1820. Now, the photo, is not a photo on the bottom right. That's a painting by Frankenstein. It's called Courtship by the Lake. Now, Frankenstein happened to be a great lover of the Niagara Falls, and he painted it from every angle. You can see some of his paintings in the Cincinnati Museum of Fine Art, which he helped us found. All right, now we'll move on to Willybrook Bridge. Now, this is pronounced Willie, not Wiley. It's Willybrook. At the time, the famed civil engineer Benjamin Latrobe inspected the line, and he gave it a very, very positive review in a letter to John Anderson. Parts of the Willybrook Bridge were brought in by rail. The wooden span on the picture that's shown, the wooden span actually lasted from 1875 to 1884 when it was condemned. Now, when the entire Willybrook Bridge was to be updated, the new bridge was built alongside the old one. Now, when it came time for the swapping out of the bridge, they had the one on the left and the one on the outside and the one on the inside. And when it came time, what they did was they uncoupled the joint bars, and then the old one was rolled out, and then the new one was rolled in. And it was a recorded time of 7 minutes. Try to do that today. You can't do it. I bet you. Now, in this area, that there was immense work done on all the granite that needed to be blasted. Granite shelf from the lock.
Takes 7 hours today.
Yeah, it would take 7 hours or 7 days. Now, in this area, there was immense rock work done. Granite shelf had to be built from the rocks that were blasted, and they all had to be fashioned into granite blocks. And if you know where to look today, especially going during the winter rides on Conway Scenic Railroad, uh, you'll see most of the line through Crawford Notch built on the shelf. A great deal of blasting had to be done throughout the notch. What would happen was they'd use star drills. Star drills were maybe 4 feet in height. What happened was you'd have a gentleman that was on his knees, and he'd hold the drill in place. You'd have the guy that would swing the sledgehammer down, hitting the top of the drill, and hopefully not hitting the guy's hands underneath. And what would happen is he'd hit it, quarter turn, hit it, quarter turn, and that was done until there was enough of a hole to fill with black powder, so when they ignited it, it would simply crack the granite. Now we're going beyond Willie Brook Bridge. Now you'll find that some of the granite shelving you can see by Route 302. And again, there was a great deal of thought given to the notch, and tamping and blasting had to be done. Now this is from photos of 1875, one on the left and the one on the right. In 1875, that's what the gateway looked like. The gateway is just a little bit forward, a little bit west of the trestle. Now today on the right, that's what it looks like. It's all filled in. They didn't stop train service. What they did was they brought up the rubble, and they simply filled it in by just dumping it down over the sides until it was filled in. So somewhere in the bowels of that ash and everything else, there's a trestle underneath there. Now the great cut. And when General Anderson drove the final fight part way into a tie, the next chap in line would say, "3 cheers for General Anderson in the last spike that completes this railroad through the everlasting hills." That was done on August 7th, 1875, at a little afternoon. The tracks were open and running. When the P&O slipped into receivership, it ceased to be the railroad and was reorganized into the Portland and Ogdensburg Railway. The Main Central Railroad leased the line from the Portland and Ogdensburg Railway in 1888. Passenger service would end on the line in April of 59, and freight in April of 83. And Conway Scenic Railroad would be able to start work on the line, revitalizing the line from North Conway to Crawford Notch in 1994, after the state of New Hampshire bought the line. And this will complete my presentation of the building the railroad through Crawford Notch. I want to thank you folks for staying on, and I really appreciate it, and I hope I've been informative to you and given you a little bit of information that you can take with you. Thank you very much.
All right, Scott, you going to take some questions?
I'll take any questions you have.
They really filled what was left of the bridge into like a slope of the rail tracks that looked more like a roadbed.
Yes, the trestle is underneath there.
It is hard to tell that a trestle is hiding underneath the pile of stone.
Yeah, it would be, especially with all the tamping and raising that have been done over the years.
How this happened is a mystery.
Yeah, it is. Must have been something to see.
I never thought a trestle would be buried under ballast.
Yeah, well, they didn't want to stop. They didn't want to stop service in any way. It would have been a great disruption to passenger service and to freight service, because you figure all the freight that went through Crawford Notch was anything from groceries, and some military items went through Crawford Notch. They even had a couple of tanks that went up through Crawford Notch on the trains.
Uh,
Yeah, that filling in of trestles happened. Lyman Viaduct down in Connecticut was an iron bridge, big one that was filled in.
Yeah,
That way you fill it, you don't have to take it's a quick way of getting something substantial and solid.
that's correct.
And I was surprised. I had thought Frankenstein or Frankenstein trestle had been completely replaced when the rebuilding was done. I'll have to go look at that, go up there
Yeah,
and look at it again and see, oh, it's the original bridge, part of it's still up there.
yep, it's right incorporated. It's all 504 feet. You'll see it, the iron and it's steel on the outside.
Hmm.
Oh, Scott, yeah, I had a question. I was wondering about the shop buildings that the P&O have at Portland, at Thompson's Point. I guess those buildings are still standing and repurposed. Do you know how long those were used for the actual railroad shops and a little of the history of those?
I don't know the history of those at all. I didn't know that they were still in existence. That's something I'll write down on
Well,
my.
I mean, the buildings are there. The railroad stopped using them long ago, I
Right.
think. But, well, of course,
Well, it's a
because that's outside your area you're talking
yeah,
about
my
tonight.
realm. I had no idea. The city of Portland, from Portland to North Conway, is kind of outside my realm only because there's not a lot of information that's published about it. And there's not a lot of course, there's no folks around that I can talk to that would know anything about this. And if Emmons Lancaster was around, he'd know the answer to that question.
I think that's
Right.
it. I think originally those buildings at Thompson's Point were the main Central's shops also. Original shops before they moved to Waterville.
Oh,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
sorry about that I couldn't answer that.
I guess one last call for questions from folks online or in the room.
Scott, do you know whatever happened to the Andersons?
The Anderson brothers, well, the General Samuel Anderson, he studied law right up until the time that he died. He died in 1906. And then
Long life.
John Anderson, he died in, I can't remember the exact date of his dying, and I apologize for not putting that in the program. He died relatively young, but he lived his last years in Wyndham, Maine.
I see.
Yeah.
And are there any monuments to the Andersons?
There was a monument up by Fabian's. There was a monument. It was a brass plaque. It's since disappeared. Nobody seems to know where it went to. It was dedicated to John Farwell and Samuel, and then to Samuel's son, John. And Samuel's son, John, was the first manager of the Mount Washington Hotel, and he oversaw it being built. And he did a lot of trail work that is, if it wasn't done then, it would not exist today. It was dedicated to them, and it was a nice outcropping of granite was on the side, and you'd pull off to the side, and you'd walk up these stairs, and there was the plaque, and it was kind of, they had benches to sit on, and that's, of course, over time, progress, it's all gone.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add?
I was surprised that the P&O went bankrupt in 1884. I guess the business didn't develop.
Well, the business developed, but the problem is that they borrowed so much from the city of Portland. And everything didn't materialize. What the line was built, the line was built with the, they were going to get to things later. It was just basically built to get the line open. Bridges would be replaced later. Chasms filled later. They wanted to just get the line open. And then as things went on and they started replacing these things that needed to be done, they got deeper and deeper in debt. People said, we want our money. Where is it? I have probably 150 pages of legal documents over here to my right. People wanting their money back from the Portland and Ogdensburg, both the railroad and the railway.
The surprising thing is, after it reorganized, the terms of the lease were like 1% dividend on the new common for like 6 or 7 years, and then 2% for the rest of the 999 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't looked at the Main Central's capital structure for a while. My Moody's Manual 46, that's after the transactions when they merged, but there was a Portland and Ogdensburg divisional bond outstanding for a while.
Yeah.
There was this big idea in the 19th century of making a major route that would go across northern New York to the St. Lawrence and get access to Lake Ontario. They called it the Great Northern Route. There were connections from Boston. And the fact that railroad across New York from Plattsburgh to Ogdensburg was, I think, like 1850, real early.
Yeah.
And the connections for Boston were, I think, there by 1851 or 52, that you could route freight that way, but it never really developed as a great route
No,
for
it
various
didn't.
reasons.
It didn't. Main Central, it did for quite some time. World War II, of course, was a big one, where everything was transported over through Crawford Notch. They had guards posted on the trestles. They had one gentleman at the top of the notch, L.W. Levitt. He carved his initials and his name into the granite outcropping on the east end of Willowbrook Bridge on the granite. If you know where to look, you're standing 6 foot high, like I was. I'm in a wheelchair now, so like I was, you stand and it's up like that. And it's L.W. Levitt, and that was 1919. He did that. He lived on the end of the trestle, and he'd get his meals with Mrs. Evans at the Mount Willow dwelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after that, I'm told that the only reason that line lasted as long as it did was East Spencer Miller. If it was not for Mr. Miller, that line would not have been as open as it was for all those years. He loved that line.
One freight a day each way.
Yep. And then, of course, you count
And the
all
local that served Gilman.
Yeah. Yeah. And you figure all those extra trains, the locals, the ones from Portland, the local from Portland to Bartlett, that was XO1 and XO1 and XO2, and that was the daily from Bartlett to Portland and Portland to Bartlett. And now I can tell you a little bit of trivia if you'd like. Now, on one of those times in 1927, on the trip from Portland to Bartlett, it was a steam locomotive. It was a regular locomotive. It was a 280-505. Pulled into Bartlett, and that was a Saturday. And she'd lay over for Sunday and go back to Portland on the next day. Well, there was a power shortage going up through the Notch, and it was a rare thing for a 280 to be used in helper service in the Notch. And it was put on July 3rd, 1927, and she got above Willie Station and exploded. It was the only boiler explosion in Crawford Notch. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about that sad occasion.
Yeah, it
It
was.
was a sister locomotive of the W class 501 and 519.
Yep. 501, of course, undergoing a slow restoration back to life in North Conway. 519 is kind of slowly making its way back to the ground at Steamtown.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, she's at Steamtown. No work's been done on her, even cosmetically. She's been sitting there ever since they came down from Vermont.
Falls.
Yeah.
470 Railroad Club used to own the 501, but we since sold it to the Conway Scenic Railroad.
Right. Yep.
So we're sticking with our diesel power, which is easy enough to maintain.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is. And now when that happened, when the 470 bought the 501, the reason they did was it had a good boiler, good sound boiler, but it didn't have very good running gear. The 519 had excellent running gear, but not so much a good boiler. So 501 was chosen by the 470 Club.
All right. Does anyone have any last questions? Hey, Scott, awesome job, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really hope everyone enjoyed it.
all right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.